In the Muskogee language, I let you know that my name is RaeLynn and I'm from the Raccoon Clan and I am from Peach Ground Tribal Town. And really appreciate the invitation to be here. Thank you, Kathy and Keith, for inviting me. But also all the local people who have come and who have worked really hard to make this green space a beautiful place to come. I was here recently last fall where we flew the Muscogee flag here with Mayor Dickens, and our principal chief and second chief got to meet Mayor Dickens and talk about government-to-government consultation and how we can work together better and to really help promote our tribal history, Muscogee Creek Nation. And so it's great to be back. When I was here, the boat ramp and the access to the creek was under construction, and so I'm really happy to be able to go down to the water today and see that really nice kayak launch pad, and that we're going to learn more about. I'm grateful to be here and share a little bit about Muscogee Creek Nation history, also remembering the culture and our people as we lived in these are our homelands. And so it's always special for me to be back here. I grew up often wondering, what if I got to live in Georgia and breathe that air and drink that water, if I would have had a more fulfilled life because of my ancestors. So just the trees, everything, I'm reminded of them. But I think that's why I love my job and the work that I do, is because I get that sense of reconnection and how important it is for our tribe and our people, some who are told never to come back here because of what happened here. And so the history is really hard. We've been removed 200 years. And it was really only in the 1970s that we started to come back. It was against the law in Georgia for a really long time for a Creek Indian to come into this territory without permission of the governor. So grateful that things have moved into a way where we are welcomed back and people invite us to come back. And I hope that we can work with more preservationists and historians in the community to try to bring more activities and have another event where we can highlight Muskogee artists, highlight traditional foods, do a cultural exchange type of event in the future. Today, the presentation is called Remembering Muskogee History and Culture at Standing Peachtree. I just wanted to go over Muskogee territory, our language, our people, talk a little bit about our treaty lands, Standing Peachtree Village, Horseshoe Bend, our removal, arrival to Indian Territory, which is present-day Oklahoma, and then also tell you a little about Muscogee Creek Nation today. I think the biggest disconnect is that what people learn in Georgia about Muscogee Creek people is that we left. But sometimes they don't realize that we're still here. And so it's very common for us to say, we're still here. And want people to know that we are a sovereign nation that is very active in fighting for tribal sovereignty every day. And so I want to leave that message with you. The Muskogee language is is indigenous to the southeast region. This map here shows in the darker red the boundary and territory of the Muskogean linguistic family. So you can see how vast and large that territory is. The language family has 6 languages, part of it. We have an Eastern and Western dialect. Today, my tribe, the Muscogee Nation, we speak the Creek Seminole dialect, which is on the eastern branch. Further western branch is the Chickasaw and Choctaw language. In the middle, we have Alabama and Coushatta, the Alabama Coushatta tribe of Texas. There's a Coushatta tribe in Louisiana. We also have Hitchiti and Mvskoke. they're pretty much the same language, and that is spoken today in Florida by the Mvskoke tribe and the Seminole tribe of Florida. And so these are the basic languages of the Muskogean linguistic family. It's thought that these different dialects took 3,000 years. We all spoke one common language at the beginning, and as these groups diverge and move away from each other, that these dialects come into play. There was a common trade language called Mobilian jargon that was commonly spoke amongst everybody who lived in the southeast and were trading, and so that really, so you could say that Muscogee was the lingua franca of the southeast region. We are descendants of mound builders. I hope that you all have been to Macon, Georgia before and have visited the Oakmulgee Mounds there. It's a very sacred place to us. Or if you've been up north to Cartersville and visited the Etowah Mounds. Etowah is an English version of the word Idowa, which means tribal town in the Muscogee language. And so there's some pictures here of some of those mound sites. Etowah is at the top. The second one is of Moundville. Does anyone know where that is? It's in Alabama. It's 40 miles south of Tuscaloosa. The University of Alabama owns the archaeological park that is there. It's the second largest mound site, or this Great Temple Mound. The Great Temple Mound's at Oakmulgee, but this is Mound B at Moundville, and it's the second tallest mound in the United States. Behind the mound at Cahokia, that's in St. Louis. The third picture is of the Oakmulgee Mounds, the Great Temple Mound. The bottom picture is showing our mound building that's located at our tribal complex and headquarters, the capital of Muscogee Nation in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. This building was built in the 1970s, but it is to pay respect and homage to our mound builder ancestors. It's a place of governance. There's district court, Supreme Court, and also our national council meet there to pass laws for our tribe. So the top of the mound building has clan symbols. Also, the other picture here is of the Earth Lodge at Okmulgee. So some mounds can be in many different forms and shapes. They're considered sacred places to us. They are stemmed from the traditional religion of our people. Also, they can be made of soil, sand, shell, and stone. Have many of you been to the barrier islands of Georgia? There's many shell mounds and middens there that are associated with very long-standing history and culture of this territory. And so, Ossabaw Island, St. Catherine's, off the coast of Savannah, Georgia. There's a lot of work to try to preserve these mounds, shell mounds, particularly because of climate change and erosion that's happening along the coast. What's interesting is that we've been doing research with the University of Georgia and found that mound building did not stop at European contact. And actually evidence of the Dyer mounds in middle Georgia on the Oconee showed that there was at least mound building construction happening 150 years after the Spanish contact with our tribe. So we tried very hard to maintain this way of life for as long as we could. But as you can imagine, as European powers are coming into the interior of the Southeast, they're encountering the Muscogee Nation, the Creek Confederacy, and all these hundreds of tribal towns that live throughout this region and are constantly being challenged for your way of life in so many changes, disease, death, and that imagine a disease coming and wiping out 60% of your population and how you would still maintain and build these mounds. And so it's something that we weren't just quick to adopt everything. We've tried very hard to maintain. Even having our language and culture today is a testament of over 500 years of colonization and attempts to try to wipe us out, basically. So mound building architecture is important and has always been a part of the democratic governance of the Muscogean people. So many people have heard about Columbus, who was claimed to discover America. Well, we didn't discover Muscogee Nation. It was the Hernando de Soto was the Spanish explorer who first encountered Muscogee people. His expedition came through Florida and then up into Georgia and then back down over into the Carolinas and Tennessee and then back down into Georgia and Alabama until he gets to Mississippi, where he dies on that excursion. So just as information, De Soto was the first European we encountered, but also there are many journals and written records about his travels. This map here is hard to see, but it lists the towns that he visited, and many of these are Muskogean language and Muskogee towns that he first encountered. And so this kind of marks the protohistoric or historic time period where there's now written records written about who the Muskogee people are. The term Creek comes from the British. After the British are in Charleston and establish themselves and they're moving into the interior of Georgia and North Georgia, they encounter Muskogee people on Euchee Creek, which is the first name of Omogi River. And the Euchee are currently a band of Seminole within the Muscogee Nation of Oklahoma, the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma. So Creek and Seminole people are very close culturally connected, and it's still amazing to see that all these years there are still people who can trace back Oconee to this, first encounter with, Euchee all the way back to the first encounter with Europeans. So the British start to call us Creeks. They could not say Oconee, and as this language barrier and trade and relationship develops, they just call us Creek because of the body of waters that we lived on. And so that's where that name comes from. I'm sure when you grew up, you heard about Creek Indians, and that's where that is coming from. And so we say Muskogee, or I would even just say my tribal town name. That's where I come from. And so some people still, as citizens, say that they're Creek. Our tribal name, Muskogee Creek Nation, is Muskogee with Creek in parentheses because it's referring to the common name that people know us by. So Muskogee does not equal the word Creek. A word for creek or river is Hutchee, which is part of Chattahoochee. And so I'll talk a little more about that. But there's several ways to spell Muskogee. So each one of these say Muskogee, Muskogee, Muskogee. Muskogee with the C-O is part of our official name. Muskogee with the K is referring to a town of Muskogee in Oklahoma, or Muscogee County. Also, Muskogee with the V. The V in the Muskogee language sounds like a, or like a letter A. So Muskogee is how you write the language. When you're referring to the Muskogee language, we use the V. But you could also say Muskogee with a V for everything, because it technically is the same word. So, but this chart is showing the different kind of names and time periods that they're used here. When I introduced myself, I let you know that I was from a tribal town and a clan, and so that's a very important part of an identity, your identity as a Muskogee person. Everyone is born into this, and you're inherited from a Muskogee mother. And so we have about 16 clans that are still active within our tribe, and there's a picture of them, or a shadow picture of them here. So the Wind clan is one of the ones that is non-animal, and also another one is the Potato clan, which is a non-animal, but the rest are bird, deer, bear, panther, or tiger is more of a common name now, a tiger. The raccoon, there's alligator, fish, beaver, wolf, turtle, snake, fox, otter, and skunk. The clan system is really important because you're not allowed to marry within your clan. You're considered family members of the same clan. And so this clan system helped. The origin story of the clans is that the Muscogean people came from inside of the earth, and when we started to come out of the earth, it was very foggy, and it was very hard to see, and that we asked the Creator to help us see. And the first thing that happens is the wind come and blew the fog away, and so the Wind Clan became the first clan. Then the Creator told us to follow the first animal that you see. And so as more and more are coming out of the earth, they see an animal and they follow that animal, and that becomes their clan. And then that's also everybody who followed that, becomes a family. And so the clan system was responsible for also punishment and enforcing laws within our society. So if I did harmed or disrespected another clan, that clan mother could retaliate or want to, have some kind of punishment on me. And so the clan also is important for what your role is in society. So Bear Clan is typically leaders or chiefs, and because a bear is very strong and big and hard to move, so you're going to have somebody that's a leader that is going to be steady and a force to reckon with. And so a lot of people do have qualities that are similar to characteristics of those animals. Like the Deer Clan also are known to be runners or people who carry messages, whether they were going from town to town. Some clans are more known to just be workers and supporters. And so we have a lot of, that plays an important role in how society works. Alegida means where you sit, and that's how you say clan. And so at our ceremonial grounds, at these mound centers, there were certain areas for clans, certain mounds for clans. And so a site like Moundville or even Okmulgee that has dozens of mounds, we believe were related to those clans. And those clans either burying their loved ones in those mounds or related to other aspects of clan leadership within the community. Muscogee people lived in the various traditional structures, what is known as wattle and daub, and quickly adapted to American-style cabins. In many cases, we are colonized or adapting or adopting European lifeways much quicker than many people or indigenous people in the United States. So some tribes are not even encountering Europeans until hundreds of years after we have already been trading and using new tools and living in a very modern lifestyle. But I just want you to know that we weren't living in teepees, and I know you don't think that, but some young people do, and some people's image of Native Americans are Hollywood-based, Wild West show-based, and so just to let you know that isn't the traditional structure of the southeastern tribal people. If you have recall from your history class, or if you Google Muscogee Creek Nation, probably one of the things that is going to come up is a talk about the Muscogee Creek Confederacy. And some people believe that the Confederacy was just formed because of the European powers that are coming into play, and that we had to unite and bring all of our tribal communities together to fight off these foreign powers. But we believe that the Creek Confederacy was existing for thousands of years because of the clan system. If I went from Standing Peachtree Village to another community, the clan that I'm from, they would welcome me. So it could be people I never even met before, but that they would say, oh, you're raccoon, you can go over here. They may feed me, they let me stay the night. You know, so that clanship system is very special and unique for a way of connecting all of these tribal towns and communities with one another. So the Confederacy had hundreds of towns. Tribal town is an important system within the Muscogee tribe because I mentioned that's everyone's born into one, but also they have their own leadership. So they all have their own chief, their own second chief, their own councils, their own medicine men, they'll have head women, they'll have many different roles within this town. And also some of the towns in the Confederacy weren't even Muskogean speaking, so like the Euchee, but also the Shawnee were a part of the Confederacy for a certain time. And what's unique about these tribal towns is, I'll go over it when I talk a little bit more about removal, but 44 are relocated on the Trail of Tears in Oklahoma. And today we have 16 that are still active and that maintain a ceremonial ground with a sacred fire that was carried on the Trail of Tears all the way from our homelands. And so it's very special, unique. The same religion that's happening at mound sites that is called the Green Corn Ceremony is happening today at these tribal towns' ceremonial grounds. And so it's a very long, enduring culture and history that not too many people know. But I will say that the Muscogee Nation, we have 100,000 citizens, and I would estimate that the population of people who still practice the traditional religion is under 10,000. And so you could really think about an endangered religion to have less than 10,000 members or people who still continue to practice that. And so for us, though, it makes me very proud to participate because it's something that we've carried on for that long of a time, regardless of all the exterior pressures, you know, that living in a modern world. Because at these places, there's no electricity, there's no running water. You're very much leaving your modern life to go and to remove yourself from that and to fast and to prepare and to become very clean for yourself in order to carry out these ceremonies. And so it's awesome that we still have many people in our community that believe and carry this on generation after generation. Later in time, a designation of Lower Creek and Upper Creek come into form. It really started as geographical differences. So the Upper Creek primarily in central Alabama along the Coosa River, the Tallapoosa River, and the Alabama River. But there also becomes political differences between the two different groups. And even just here is to show that there's over 80 tribal towns. It's really hard to see on this map what these names are. But that, you know, and each tribal town can have up to 2,000 people. And as they get bigger than that, they start to branch off and create another town or a daughter town. And there were 4 main tribal towns that would form the basis of all tribal towns. The Lower Creek lived primarily in western and central Georgia during the historic period. So along the Chattahoochee River, along the Flint River, the Mulkey, the Oconee, which formed the Altamaha. What you don't see on this map is the Savannah River or the Georgia coast, which is very important too. Most of the state of Georgia was Muskogee lands, and so it had Muskogee occupation, and so everything was important. There's actually one archaeologist who said there's really two archaeological sites, one on the east side of the Chattahoochee and one on the west side. But the whole state is a site, you know, because it was so rich in culture and history that you really couldn't throw a stone and not hit something that related to Native American occupation. The Muscogee Nation was a part of 28 different treaties, which included land cessions. So this map is to kind of show you these different colored land areas that were part of these treaty negotiations. The red area is our treaties that were with the British and also Spain, but were taken before the United States was actually a government. The first treaty with the United States for Muscogee Nation was in 1790, and George Washington, the first president, signed that treaty with our principal chiefs, and it was called the Treaty of New York. At that time, New York was the capital of the United States. What ends up happening is about every 10 years, there's more negotiations and we're pushed further and further west until eventually we were completely removed. It was the 1821 Treaty of Indian Springs that includes the area here at Standing Peachtree in the modern day city of Atlanta. So at 1821, that land was ceded. So the occupation, native occupation of these lands pretty much ends around 1821. And so I know seeing all these nice boards full of information, there's a lot of history that happens around this time, 1813, 14, leading up to us ceding this territory, and then how quickly it becomes reestablished and goes on to create the Atlanta metro area. But this treaty is also very controversial because only a limited number of Muskogee chiefs signed this treaty, and it was against the law with the Muskogee National Council for individual tribal towns to sign a treaty. It had to come from all the principal chiefs. Many of these treaties are signed by 30 or more chiefs of the tribal towns who come and negotiate. The National Council did not approve this treaty, but there were about a dozen of Muskogee leaders who did sign. Most notably was the Kuwita Miko. Miko is the word for chief in the Muskogee language. At the time, William McIntosh, who many of you are familiar with and know of. So this treaty becomes controversial. It's the only one that gets revoked, where the Muskogee Nation went back to meet with the United States leadership to try to say that this was done irresponsibly and not correct. And they did find that, yes, you're correct on that. But what happens is they renegotiate another treaty of Indian Springs later on. But I want to highlight this one just because it includes this green area here is the land that was ceded at that time. Everything in red is showing Muskogee Nation treaties with the United States, and then the Cherokee is in blue up north. So the Cherokee are kind of coming into North Georgia around the late 1700s, early 1800s, and so there are treaties negotiated with them around the same time. And so just as so you can tell, I'm going to zoom in here too. If this green area, again, is the 1821 treaty, which includes Atlanta, and you can see names like Buzzard Roost and also Sandtown. But some people have asked me, is this park actually on Muskogee land, or is it Cherokee land? So we are pretty close to that boundary here, but it definitely shows that Atlanta is on Muskogee lands, the territory. And the Chattahoochee River is the boundary of that treaty. One thing I told the mayor was that the Chattahoochee River used to be the boundary of the United States, because after we cede that land, that becomes United States territory, but everything on the other side of it is still Muskogee Nation. And so it's crazy to think that once that was the boundary of the United States. that was there at one time. So kind of moving more on to Standing Peachtree, Muscogee Village and settlement along the Chattahoochee River. Chattahoochee, there's many names thought associated with it. Some have said that it means Red River or Painted River. Chatta, I guess is English, we thought was Jati, which means the color red. However, the majority of our elders say that Chattahoochee or Chutto is the word for rock or stone, and so that Chuttohutchee is meaning Markstone River, and that there were many shoals and areas, or that there were a lot of rocks that marked the boundary of this river. And I think that geologically and historically, maybe you all can confirm that that is also true about the Chattahoochee. I did learn today that people call it the Hoochie. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But what's unique about this site too is where the water facility is. There used to be a mound there, and that mound was destroyed because of the development in the water treatment facility. But archaeologists did do some work to try to investigate that mound, and found that it was an early Etowah phase occupation that was a part of that mound. And so that shows the connection to Parkersville and that Etowah mound centered there. The site is also closely connected to those other settlements that were on the map, the Buzzard Roost and also Sandtown. And there are some maps that showed these towns in the Muskogee language, and so I wanted to kind of go over them and actually hear what you all call these towns too, or if you've seen them in the Muskogee language. One of them looks like it says Sulikaga or Sulikaga. And so in Muskogee language, Suli means buzzard, and Kega means sitting on, or sitting, many sitting. And so you would say in the Muskogee language, Suli Kega. So that C kind of is a little different, but so Buzzard Roost is the English word for that. Also, the other town, Okta-Tolova. Oktaha means sand, and Tolova is also the word for town in the Muskogee language. And so that's, I don't know locally or how other people might say the English version of the Okta-Tolova, or if that's still common or knowledge or not. So moving on next to Pekana Huli is how you all say it. Pekana, or we say the letter P like the letter B. So Bagana. Bagana means peach. And so Weethida, so the H almost sounds like a W. Weethida means to stand. And so Pekana Huli is a version of Standing Peachtree. And so that is correct, and I believe that even that historical marker that says it was a pitch tree, and others who say we're never going to know that to see Pekana Huli on a historic map, that definitely means peach in the Muskogee language. There's no doubt. So I do believe that the stories of a single peach tree on that mound reflect the name, but also I believe there was more than one peach tree. I believe that, you know, I come from a town called Peach Ground, and that that things are named after things that are in abundance, and so there would have been many different peach trees that were planted Why was it planted on top of the mound? You know, there's a lot of speculation. I would say that it was an offering that turned into a tree. But also, I do think that there were dedicated and special plantings of peach trees because they tasted so good. And they become a very nature candy for us, and that we really enjoyed them. So there are a lot of connections with the historic Standing Peachtree Village with the lower Muscogee Creek, particularly the tribal town of Colita, Casita, and also Broken Arrow, which are tribal towns currently near present-day Columbus, Georgia, on the Chattahoochee. The historic settlement, and where Europeans start to come in and where it becomes a fort that had a stockade and blockhouses and a boatyard, was led by not just Army officer George Gilmer, who eventually goes on to become the governor of Georgia, but also Governor Mitchell at the time. And so we have some big leadership people, you know, wanting to be here on the river and be here at Standing Peachtree. I believe because there were so many resources, because how important transportation, water transportation is at this time. And also, you know, there are still tribal people here at this time too. There were known Lower Creek, or a fraction of Lower Creek people, assumed around 400, who also fought with the Americans and were gearing up to battle other Muscogee people that were Upper Creek. And so it's a very complicated history, because throughout time the Muscogee people were on both sides of every major war and battle. And so I think a lot of times people think that, you know, one tribe would be 100% in the same perspective on something, but like you and your families and your communities, everybody has an opinion, and not everybody is believing the same thing. So when it comes to core values is one thing, but when politics come into play, I'm sure you all know that people have different views on that. And so just like us, so we weren't a monolithic, uniform society that it was only one way or the other. People had the freedom to want to be more European, or want to intermarry, or want to adapt to different lifestyles, and so that is what happened. So this time period is very critical because it starts the Creek Civil War, where, like I said, we have Muskogee people on both sides, and that's around 1813, 1814. What's interesting about Standing Peachtree and the fort is that they were making supplies and getting things ready for the battle at Horseshoe Bend, which becomes the final battle of the Creek Civil Wars. Actually, next weekend will be the 211th anniversary of this battle of Horseshoe Bend. The Muscogee Nation will be at the Horseshoe Bend National Military Park in Davidson, Alabama. Our principal chief is giving the keynote address. We're going to light lanterns to show the 800 warriors that died in the Muscogee Creek Red Stick Warriors, and around the 30 Americans that died during that battle with Andrew Jackson. So if you're willing to make a short drive, we invite you to come and meet our leadership, and to see this memorial as we commemorate that battle, not celebrate, but it's a time of reflection. For us, you know, it was a very sad part of our history, and there were 6 tribal towns who fought in that battle. We're going to have people from those towns come with us to be able to see the site. We're also working on putting up a monument there. Right now there's a monument to Andrew Jackson, and we don't feel that he should be the only person celebrated, and that it's very important for Muskogee people to go to this place in this battlefield and to feel recognized and to feel honored. And so we're working on designing a monument that will be at that park eventually.
Where is it? Where is it? question?
It's at Davidson, Alabama. It's not far from Auburn or Opelika area. So the Battle of Horseshoe Bend and many other things, as losing the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, we had to cede also. It was one thing to lose and have that many loss of life in one day, but Andrew Jackson wanted us or forced us to sign a peace treaty which gave up 23 million acres of land, most of the land in Alabama and also a third of land in Georgia in the south. Within 5 years of that treaty, Alabama becomes a state. Andrew Jackson goes on to Battle of New Orleans. After that, becomes the President of the United States. He also creates the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which was to get rid of all the tribes in the Southeast. And so the act passes in 1830, but we're not moving. You can say this is a law and it exists, but it had to turn to forced removal because we didn't want to leave. And so around 1836 is when another connection to Standing Peachtree is the connection to Fort Mitchell down in Columbus, near Columbus, Georgia, Phoenix City, Alabama, that the supplies and communication from those forts are helping each other out. And Fort Mitchell is where all the creeks are forced to get round up before the forced removal. And so there's a lot of connections to this area and to the story of the Muscogee people. This map shows the detachments that left from Fort Mitchell. You can kind of see them all starting here. Each detachment had around 1,500 to 2,000 people. 23,000 people are forced on this Trail of Tears, what we call Mimi Estamika, which means the road of misery. A lot of times the terms Trail of Tears are associated with the Cherokee removal, and so each tribe has their own language and terms that they use for the removal. One thing that's interesting is that you may not be aware is that some of the removal routes were by boat, by steamboat, and happen in the Gulf. And so you can see the red line that goes into the Gulf of Mexico and over up the Mississippi River into the Arkansas Territory and over. And so the steamboat didn't mean that you had money or you were rich. It actually was opposite of that. If you were removed on the steamboats, it was because you were a prisoner of war. You were handcuffed and chained to the boat. It was easier to keep track of prisoners that way instead of letting them walk freely on this journey. It was over 800 miles long. How long would you think it would take to walk 800 miles? Anyone want to guess? 4 months. That's right on target. The quickest was 4 months that it took some of these detachments to get to Indian Territory. But many, it took 6 or more months. They're leaving Fort Mitchell in August in the summer. They're arriving in the winter by the time they get there with no provisions, no blankets, no shoes. There's stories about bloody footprints in the snow. There's stories of people in Arkansas coming out and watching like it's a parade as a 70-mile-long detachment is going through. You might think of it as a single-file line, but it wasn't like that. They were mile-wide paths of people, and everyone going at a different pace. And so you may have, 20 or 30 coming, and then, a few minutes later there's more coming. But 70 miles in length of people forced to make this. They were going about 20 miles a day in the camp. 4,000 of those 23,000 lost their lives and never made it. Many who were elders or children and too tired or sick, too young to make this journey. After we arrive, many people are sick, and and a lot more die even after we arrive because the lands are nothing compared to this. the wildlife is not as abundant. The plants that we use for medicines are not there. It took a very long time for our people to know their way around and to reconnect with the land in order to survive and to heal. I'm going to skip over hundreds of years of history to tell you about us today. If I had more time, I would share more, but you don't really want to hear me talk for another 2 hours. So today, Muscogee Nation, we're the 4th largest tribe in the United States. We have 100,000 citizens. There are 574 tribes that are federally recognized in the United States. So does anyone know what the number 1 or the largest tribe is? The Cherokee Nation. Number 2 is Navajo Nation from the Southwest. Number 3 is the Choctaw Nation. Number 4 is Muscogee Nation. So 3 of the top 4 are southeastern tribes. And I think that that's a testament to show that we overcome this removal. We survived and we repopulated. And also that we were a force to reckon with back then. And it wasn't easy. In the government, you know, having sponsored these contracts to force us out was unheard of its time. They never mobilized or tried to move that many people ever before. It's one thing to send 500 troops to go to war, but 23,000 people, the accommodations were not enough. You know, but I think it's a strong testament to show that we have overcome and bounced back from that hardship. We have a elected principal chief and second chief and national council. We operate a $300 million budget. We employ over 4,000 people at our tribal government, whether it's in the healthcare facility or even on the economic side. We have operate 3 hospitals on our reservation. We have 7 clinics. And so healthcare becomes a big part of the workforce. I work in one department of 80 at the tribal nation government. And so we're very big. A lot of times when I tell people I work for Muscogee Nation, back home they say, oh, the casino? And so there's also interpretation of all tribes are as casinos, which is not true. We provide vital services for our citizens like healthcare, housing, education, social services. We have law enforcement. We have emergency management. We are just like an operating city, and that's you know, we're a sovereign nation. We have our own court system, you know. So I want people to understand what that means, because it's very different from someone who just has native ancestry. Okay, because it doesn't mean they're a citizen of a government necessarily, and so that's why we feel that anything regarding our history and culture, we have dedicated historians and staff that can help explain that history. And so if you're interested and curious, please reach out directly to our tribe and our nation in order for us to participate or to help you in your event. Here's a picture of the leadership. Chief and second chief, our Supreme Court, and our National Council. You can see dressed very modern, but they have nice gorgets. It's hard to see. That's still carried on from the mound building times. Our current reservation includes 11 whole and partial counties in northeast Oklahoma. And so these are a map showing that boundary. It's about 4,000 square miles. We have 8 voting districts, 2 council reps from each one, so 16 total. There are 69 towns or communities on the reservation, including the city of Tulsa. We have 24 Creek communities throughout the reservation, so they're kind of like satellite offices. Our headquarters is in the middle here in Okogie, but you can travel an hour each way. So sometimes people need resources closer to home, and so these community centers were put in place to help them. There's 71 different school districts on a reservation. So we have a big education department that tries to work with the local public schools to help those Native students who are attending there. The Historic and Cultural Preservation Department are one of the ones who have come out to Georgia, to our homelands, and have done a lot of work to make connections, to work with archaeologists, to document archaeological sites, to help protect and share our history. And so I just wanted to let you know that we have a department dedicated to that. And we're probably coming out about once a month or every other month. And so that there's always an opportunity for us to meet or to talk to your school or to try to connect in some way. But we work to preserve sites that are already on the National Register, or it's hard to see here, but these are grave houses. This is a traditional burial practice that is part of the Muscogee Nation today. In our homelands, we would bury people in the floor of our home or within the house. And today, they built the house on top of a grave because as people became Christianized, and people were really judging us, saying that that was an improper thing to do. But we also have ceremonial grounds in churches we try to protect, and also the bottom pictures of Oldie mounds. There's a lot of work to try to repatriate. In the 1930s and 40s, the Works Progress Administration put in several dams in these areas, and as they're building major infrastructure after the Great Depression, they uncovered thousands of burials, especially around the waterways where all the tribal people were living. And so now we're in a situation that museums and universities have thousands upon thousands of Native American ancestors in their collections, or sacred objects in their museums. And there are two federal laws that help us to repatriate. The Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, and also the National Historic Preservation Act. Under those two laws, we exercise our sovereign rights to have a voice in the new wastewater treatment facility and whether it's going to impact a mound site. But that only came into play in the 90s. And so obviously there was no consultation on that. But today there is. And so we have some way to have our voice in trying to protect these places. The Tribal Historic Preservation Office, or Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, is called the TIPO. That's a very important role within the tribe and pretty much oversees those federal laws and how we respond. We were the 114th TIPO, and we were established in 2011. And it's an agreement with the Park Service. So have you heard of the SHPO? The State Historic Preservation Officer? This is equivalent to that. It's a Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, but on tribal lands. Our area of interest, everything in red here, we consider to be Muskogean territory. So you can remember that language map that kind of is similar, but this includes all time periods. This is not just modern time or after removal. This includes all time. And everything in red is where we're consulting under those federal laws. So if you find remains in that red area, or you find artifacts, we want to know about it. It does overlap with other tribes. We're not saying we're the only tribe that was in this territory, but that we want a seat at the table to help determine who is most culturally affiliated to those items. I just want to finish. We've been doing some work on peaches, and how cool is it that I'm from Peach Ground and here at Standing Peachtree. Previous work is doing radiocarbon dating on peach pits that are found at different archaeological sites, tribal sites in the state of Georgia and throughout the southeast. And what they're finding is that the indigenous people spread these seeds from contact with the Spanish, and so the long story short is Georgia, being the peach state, pays a lot to the Muscogee people who planted those trees, for those who come and then occupy those lands and also love peaches and continue to spread and plant them. Has anyone ever grown peaches before? A couple? It can take 7 years before they start to fruit. And so understanding that Native American people understood that, placed them in certain areas, and we even took these seeds with us on the Trail of Tears. There is a Georgia variety of peach in Oklahoma that was cultivated here. And so we'd like to do more studies to see the genetics and how they're related. There's only a few peaches that are commercial that make it to the grocery store, but there's many different varieties, and some of ours are very small, but so they're not necessarily nice and peachy like that. But it's neat. There's an article about this in the Scientific American on this research that I hope that Keith and Kathy can share with you if you're interested. Mado is thank you. I really appreciate your time today, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.